Chapter 497. Bear had goosebumps all over his body, and the golden luster in front of his eyes went straight to his forehead. When the light sword arrived, he had a sense of death and suffocation. The majestic and huge body instinctively reacted and retreated at the most incredible speed in his life. Poochie! Blood splattered everywhere as he raised his saber. In the pitch-black night sky, a crimson light flashed. Suddenly, purplish-red plum blossoms appeared on the ground, and a fishy smell unique to blood spread out. Bear's nerve reflex speed was beyond imagination. At the critical moment, he avoided the fatal sword light and sword shadow. Even so, he still couldn't escape from Incubus. Although he escaped from Dustless's first wave of attack, he was still caught up by absolute speed and successfully dealt the final blow. Bear's right arm, which he often used to attack, had a straight burn wound clearly visible. Because of the hot kusanagi, the new bloody wound has been burned, and the length of the mark is almost half of his entire length. Allah! Bear, this reaction ability. Oh! Dustless secretly smacked his lips. If it was Crocodile, he would have been separated forever. Now Bear is only in his 30s, which is very young for a pirate's lifespan. There is still a long time, and there is still the possibility of infinite progress in the future. His strength can't reach the level of Whitebeard, but at least he can enter the strength of an admiral. His body is really strong. Looking carefully at Bear's wound, Dustless was quite surprised. Now Bear's body has not been transformed by Vegapunk, and it is not as strong as it will be in the future. The feeling of cutting his skin was no different from cutting steel. Just as Dustless sighed, the dark space suddenly turned crimson. The ability to make others envious. Looking up, he saw Bear's palm, gradually extending a crimson air shield, slowly increasing in size, and finally out of his palm. It has no attack effect. The bear's pained expression immediately eased, and its expression returned to normal, returning to its previous old-fashioned self. Dustless knew that this was Bear's physical fatigue and the pain caused by physical damage, all of which were reflected by the fruit's ability. After the bear recovered, he once again glared at Dustless. Killing intent burst out from his body, and the suppressed killing intent was filled with intense hatred. He wanted nothing more than to tear Dustless into pieces. As you can see, your attack has no effect on me. After saying that, Xiong's killing intent became even deeper. He did not care about Dustless's movements and concentrated on compressing the air. Wuchen just smiled when he heard that. Are you saying that you want to exhaust me to death with your own ability? Perhaps this strategy was a good one for others, but for Dustless, it was negligible. In the face of unlimited chakra and absolute strength, any schemes and tricks were just self-deception. Before we start, I have a question that I need you to answer. Why are you looking for me? Seeing the chi cover in Xiong's hand getting bigger and bigger, Dustless called out for it to stop. He still had many questions waiting for Xiong to answer. For Dustless's words, Xiong directly ignored them and continued to compress the air. Time passed quickly, the white chi cover was getting bigger and bigger, and an unprecedented silence suddenly descended. It was certain that the villa where Dustless lived for a while would be completely wiped out by the compressed air. Even if you want a yard after taking an inch, you should know when to stop. You ungrateful thing, don't get too carried away. Seeing that Xiong did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, Dustless's expression became cold, and his whole body erupted with hostility. His eyes were focused on the expanding chi cover, and his face was full of ridicule. This is Mariewa, my territory. You are so unscrupulous. Where can I, a celestial dragon, put my face? His words were full of killing intent and filled with some kind of evil magic. Above the white chi cover, the void began to surge slightly, and then suddenly twisted. A small whirlpool slowly took shape and kept expanding. It looked harmless to humans and animals. Divine power. As Dustless's voice fell, the vortex floating in the void instantly magnified by more than 100 times, and the white chi cover that Shionkushin had been gathering for a long time was directly swallowed. Even because the suction force was too strong, Xiong's whole body was almost sucked in. There is actually such an ability. Xiong took a deep breath with difficulty, lost his indifference, and said in shock. The mysterious and powerful suction force was controlled very cleverly, just right. He was even sure that it didn't need much, just a little more density, and his whole body would be annihilated. As for the unknown dark space on the other side, it was naturally the universe graveyard. Xiong suddenly realized that he was fighting with Dustless, and was about to activate the fruit's ability to fight again, when a golden rainbow flashed in the dark night sky, and fell from the sky. Boom boom boom, the ground collapsed and shattered, and the cracks crazily extended like a spider web. Dust and smoke rose everywhere, and the bumpy ground gave people the illusion that they were living on the surface of the moon. The surrounding buildings were all destroyed, and it was extremely desolate. You should be more obedient now. In the deep pit, Dustless stepped on Xiong's body with one foot, and his eyes were cold. Looking around, he saw that the surroundings were filled with sandstorms caused by the explosion. A majestic energy wave was flung out from his hand, and the devastating storm in the sky immediately calmed down. On the other hand, Xiong's 6 to 7 meter tall body was covered with all kinds of wounds, and he was bleeding non-stop. Piercing pain spread all over his body, and because of Dustless's suppression, he didn't even have the chance to activate the fruit's ability to repel the pain. For a moment, he was tormented. We have no grievances in the past, and no hatred today. You tried to assassinate me in the middle of the night, and if you don't give a reasonable explanation, even if I kill you, it will be hard to vent the hatred in my heart. Dustless stared at Xiong with a smile, and the viciousness in his tone caused the air to freeze. No grievances in the past, and no hatred today. Hearing this, Xiong laughed strangely, as if he had heard the most ignorant joke in the world, and said with hatred, "You bastard, do you think you can fool everyone with your tricks?" Chapter 498. Xiong stared at Dustless crazily, with a ferocious look. He couldn't wait to swallow him whole, and a piercing chill overflowed from hundreds of millions of pores all over his body. The cold killing intent even wanted to freeze Dustless's right foot that was stepping on him. The dying struggle of a beast. Seeing this, Dustless sneered again and again, and his eyes flashed with a strange color. Looking carefully at Xiong's scarlet eyes because of rage, Dustless knew that he was revealing his true feelings. He didn't expect this guy to have such a deep relationship with Dorag. He joined the abnormal organization Shichibukai in advance just to avenge Dorag. Even if you lose your life, you still want to avenge Dorag? Dustless asked with a smile while looking at the furious Xiong quietly. To be honest, he admired Xiong's loyalty from the bottom of his heart. However, admiration is not an excuse for Dustless to forgive Xiong. He dared to assassinate him in public, and it is impossible not to pay the price. And this price will be his life. A gentleman dies for his friends, such a simple truth, how can you celestial dragons understand? Still maintaining a ferocious and cold look, Xiong sneered. The actions of the celestial dragons are known to the world, and cold-blooded animals are synonymous with them. Xiong hates the world government very much, and he hates the celestial dragons even more. I really don't understand. Hearing this, Dustless nodded, and then looked at Xiong faintly, and his eyes showed a deep light. But in the current situation, it seems that the fetters are useless, whoever has the bigger fist, whoever has the final say. Narrowing his eyes, Dustless pondered for a long time, and asked the doubts in his heart, how did you find out that Dorag is wrong? Even if you are 10 times stronger, you can't find out that I have tampered with his memory. Dustless only used the Tensigen to modify Dorag's goal, and his personality has not changed, and he is still the silent Dorag of the past. It's very simple. Once a person's goal changes, his personality will naturally change slowly. Not only me, but many people have also noticed Durag's abnormality. In the past, Durag's goal was to save the world. Therefore, his temperament was very sacred and approachable. But now, Durag gave people a much more selfish and indifferent feeling. This also indirectly showed that his will had been shaken, and his temperament had undergone some unknown changes. As long as one went to Logue Town and asked around, one could vaguely guess the truth of that day. After all, there were quite a number of people who saw Durag being defeated by Dustless. So what? It is true that I did something to him. However, do you think that you can change anything? Dustless said coldly as he looked at Xiong with disdain. He had already guessed that Xiong had taken advantage of this opportunity to join the 7 warlords of the sea to get close to him, so that he could wait for a chance to retaliate. Moreover, Dulag is only using the slogan of practicing medicine to fulfill his own ambition. Thinking of the memory in Dulag's mind, Wu Chen was even more disdainful of this and held a contemptuous attitude. All human beings are selfish. After the world government is overthrown, the emperor above all living beings will be Durag. It's a pity to kill you. You will soon become the same existence as Durag, change your consciousness and memory, and become my slave. A light suddenly flashed in his mind and Dustless decided. What a good big bear, just put a collar on him and make him loyal to himself forever. It's a pity to kill him in a hurry. It's also a waste to make use of trash. Don't even think about it. Xiong retorted with a livid face, and his body began to struggle violently. Even though he has been subdued by Dustless, Xiong's majestic power has not been reduced at all. His 6 or 7 meter body moved and the earth shook. Ah! It's already my mercy to not kill you, and you still want to resist. In this case, you can't blame me for mercilessly abusing animal. Anyway, your body's recovery ability is strong enough. The frost on his face condensed, and Dustless's strength also increased. His right foot still stepped on Xiong's back, but the strength was more terrifying than before. Caw caw caw, the ground that couldn't bear the weight directly burst, and it was as fragile as a piece of white paper. Xiong also vomited blood uncontrollably, and his dark face became pale, like a candle in the wind, revealing the bone marrow powerlessness. Dustless's calf on his body weighed thousands of pounds in an instant, and his bones trembled violently. What is your purpose? Xiong asked in a deep voice as he endured the piercing pain all over his body. Since he chose to control Durag, a force that is hostile to the world government, it shows that Dustless's purpose is not simple. A Tenryubido holding a revolutionary army behind the scenes, Xiong's back is cold when he thinks about it. It's not that he can't bear it, but the idea is too crazy. Your revolutionary army, as well as the 7 warlords of the sea, will be my loyal dogs in the future. Ah no, it's my subordinates. I'm really sorry. If I don't pay attention, I will speak the truth. Regardless of Xiong's expression, Wu Chen made a distressed expression. You fart, Shichibukai, was established by Sengoku. What does it have to do with you? The pirate organization of Shichibukai was proposed by Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and was finally led by Sengoku. It had nothing to do with Dustless in the middle. What does it matter? Of course, I established it with the help of Sengoku. Hearing this, Dustless's mouth pulled a strange smile and said straightforwardly. Chapter 499. Dustless is the kind of person who is narrow-minded and extremely vengeful. Crocodile provoked him for no reason. For Dustless, he has already indirectly committed a capital crime. He didn't kill him just because he still has value. Dustless still understands the well-known truth that people who threaten him should be removed in advance. Keeping him alive is to squeeze out his last value. After taking a long deep breath, Dustless seemed to be a little sleepy. He casually found a place to sit down on Ursa's body and then said coldly, whether it is you or other members of the 7 warlords of the sea, in the future, you are all my chess pieces. Looking at Ursa's eyes, Dustless went straight to the point. There is no need to hide it. Anyway, Ursa is not a valuable person like Crocodile. He can directly modify his memory. Nonsense, Ursa's indifferent and disgusted eyes swept across Dustless. Ursa snorted and looked at the ground. Ursa suddenly felt that Sengoku and Dustless are both members of the world government. The former is indeed much kinder. You and Dorag have a really deep relationship. Looking carefully at the burly Ursa, Dustless sneered and said, "Don't worry, since you control Dorag, you will accompany him as a revolutionary cadre." Ursa's value is not as good as Crocodile. Although he is stronger than him, he can't escape the fate of Dustless's evil claws. What does Jinbe have to do with you? Suddenly the fishman with blue eyes appeared in his mind. Ursa said in a deep voice, "Compared with other pirates, Jinbe is different. He will never be your dog." Looking up at Wu Qin, Xiongran said fearlessly. When he joined the Revolutionary Army, he had already disregarded life and death. Especially now, for him, it was better to die than to live. He would die cleanly in a few days. Jinbe is famous for being the Knight of the Sea. He is not the kind of pirate who cares only about profit. What a joke, their princess is my slave. What can Jinbe do? Dustless sneered with a playful smile on his face. Princess Otoheim, the object of Jinbe's respect, was actually Dustless's servant. Even now, the mother and son's body still has the charm planted by Dustless. The effect of a Jinbe was negligible, and Dustless also turned a blind eye to it. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will pay them back 100 times. This is Dustless's creed. If Jinbe can obediently go down, Wu Qin can naturally treat everything that happened before as a fleeting cloud, a reflection in the water. But from another point of view, Jinbe also took the initiative to provoke him like Kuma. Everything is another matter. Sleep well forever for me. Seeing Xiong, who was usually a man of few words, twitching his mouth again, Wu Chen's left eye suddenly rippled, and the mysterious and unadorned 9 black Magatama trembled slightly. Hearing this, Dustless smiled for a while, and at the same time, he couldn't help but frown at Blackbeard's ruthlessness. He dared to use the power rock to blow up the Marines. This has touched the bottom line that Sengoku can accept. Despite this, Dustless still chose to watch from the sidelines. He is just an honorary admiral of the Marine headquarters, and this kind of thing is a headache for Sengoku. They hope that one day someone can kill Doflamingo for the sake of the people. From the attitude of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, towards Doflamingo, it is impossible to give him the identity of a Shichibukai. Hearing this, Doflamingo nodded and took out the Den mushi used to contact Dustless. In the face of such an embarrassing situation, he has to admit that he wants to turn over and hug Dustless's thigh. Chapter 501. If possible, Doflamingo absolutely did not want to humbly beg others. People had dignity, and he was once a celestial dragon, even more so. However, the current reality forced him to kick his dignity aside. Compared to the future rise of the Don Quixote pirates, his so-called dignity was just a worthless piece of scrap metal. The hesitation in his eyes turned into a resolute and decisive look. Clenching his teeth, Doflamingo still chose to hug the big thigh. Now only Dustless, who lives in heaven, can save them. It's impossible for him to attract the attention of the Gorosei with his weak strength. Of course, it's more likely to attract the killers of the world government. You don't come here for nothing, Doflamingo. On the other side of the Den mushi, Dustless's indifferent voice was heard, with a hint of banter and playfulness. Hearing this tone, Doflamingo frowned slightly, and the words that were about to come out of his mouth were choked back in his throat. Dustless gave him a feeling of waiting for him to come out. This frivolous accent made Doflamingo uncomfortable all over. He clearly knew that it was a trap, but he still jumped in regardless of his own safety. This was even worse than killing him. Thinking about the future of the Don Quixote pirates, Doflamingo chose to abandon his dignity. The damn Gorosei and Sengoku didn't think of me. 7 warlords of the sea has been established, but there is no place for me. It's ridiculous. Doflamingo's bronze face was gloomy like water, and he said with hatred. There are worthless roadside goods like crocodile and jinbi, but without him, how can Doflamingo remain calm? Only the aura of the Shichibukai can make him feel at ease and can live calmly under the sun. Don't worry. Dustless's calm voice came from the other side of the phone. Hearing this, Doflamingo, who was angry, wanted to refute, but he realized the gap between their identities and chose to shut up. Now he is Dustless's little brother. Doflamingo's blazing heart was doused with cold water, and only then did he calm down. Looks like the goddess of luck keeps passing by you. Time doesn't wait for you. On the other side of the Den Mushi, Dustless sighed. He naturally knew why the Gorosei rejected Doflamingo. Doflamingo has too many halos, and his ambition is enough to devour the world. Could it be that the fate of the Don Quixote pirates is to live on this desolate island? It's impossible to build an unprecedented super battleship like Pluto using such a narrow path. Doflamingo said with resentment in his heart. How could he remain calm when living on such a simple and insignificant island that was not even worth mentioning? He was also fascinated by the legendary king of the sea, One Piece. Dustless shook his head. Doflamingo was almost 30 years old. He didn't expect him to have such an unrealistic and ridiculous dream of being the pirate king. Pursuing one's dream doesn't have to be a pirate. No one says that only pirates can be the pirate king. In Dustless's view, this is just a lousy excuse that Doflamingo made for himself. It's not persuasive. Are you threatening me, Doflamingo? Dustless asked in a low tone. Hearing this, Doflamingo's face stiffened. He could even feel the cold air of Dustless in the Den Mushi. His body uncontrollably had goosebumps, and he quickly changed his words. Now Dustless is his only hope. Abandoning him is tantamount to stepping into hell. It's certainly not a threat. We are now grasshoppers on the same boat. I won't do such a stupid thing. Doflamingo promised when he heard the anger in Dustless's tone. Whether it's insincerity or not, it's a fact that he and Dustless are grasshoppers on the same boat. If he gets off Dustless's boat, there is little hope for him to survive in the future. If there is no opportunity, you can create one. You can use your identity as a celestial dragon. Seeing Doflamingo lowering his posture, Dustless no longer put pressure on him. Doflamingo's idea of joining the 7 warlords of the sea was told in detail. Or rather, Dustless can come up with a lousy idea. As for the effect, only Doflamingo can experience it personally to know. Hearing the contents of the Den Mushi, Doflamingo's old face suddenly turned black. This is not a trick. In his view, it's a borrowed knife to kill someone. It's completely pushing him into the fire. This is the most practical strategy. Dustless said with certainty for fear of Doflamingo's suspicion. Doflamingo's cheeks were filled with embarrassment. This is like walking on a tightrope thousands of miles high. If he's not careful, he may fall to the ground and break his bones. Is there no other feasible way? Doflamingo asked unwillingly. Although Dustless on the other side of the Den Mushi said it with evidence, and even speculated what kind of expression the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, will have when they receive the news, Doflamingo still feels unreliable. This is the only feasible way. Your identity is sensitive. If you don't make some big movements that make the Gorosei feel helpless and have a headache, how can you move their hearts? In short, I've said the method, and the final decision is still up to you. After that, Dustless didn't care how Doflamingo reacted. Whether he agreed or not, he simply hung up the Den Mushi and completely left it to the latter to decide. The trivial matters of the Don Quixote pirates still need to be solved by Captain Doflamingo. It's not Dustless's turn to point out a sharp mountain, but according to Dustless's final guess, Doflamingo should finally choose to listen to his own opinion. There is no other reason. The last time he came to Mariewa, he had completely offended the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Refusing Dustless's conditions is tantamount to stepping into hell. The highest power in the world, the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. What kind of people are they? Dustless doesn't need to say more. Doflamingo also knows it like a mirror. 5 wolves and tigers that eat people without spitting out the bones. If he doesn't want to be torn to pieces, he can only do it according to Dustless's ideas. Chapter 502. Treble cautiously peeked at Doflamingo. When he saw that Doflamingo's vicious aura had been restrained, he heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Although Doflamingo loves his family, crew, very much and treats them all as his brothers, but perhaps because of the reason that things go in the opposite direction, every time he remembers his cruelty to the enemy, Treble is uncontrollably afraid. Young master, that person means. Treble whispered to Doflamingo's left side. To this day, Treble and other members of the Don Quixote pirates still don't know the name of Dustless, and they dare not ask more. If it is suitable for them to know, Doflamingo will clearly tell them. Until today, Doflamingo has not told the members of the Don Quixote pirates about Dustless's origin, indicating that their identity is not enough to know. They can only use that person to call Dustless him. His strategy is just a gamble. With a snort, Doflamingo said disapprovingly. His mouth said that he doesn't care, but he has actually decided to implement Dustless's strategy, although it is somewhat absurd and even a little carelessness will lead to him stepping into a place of no return, which is equivalent to a moth flying into a flame. But even so, Doflamingo racked his brains and couldn't think of a more perfect plan. You mean to say that the young master wants to reject that person's plan? Although Treble's appearance is sloppy and idiotic, his brain is still quite clever. Doflamingo's words obviously reject Dustless's plan. That's not it. Although it's a bit unreliable, it's the only shortcut to get the name Shichibukai. Doflamingo shook his head and vetoed. The method is a bit crazy, but it can directly force the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, to make a decision, and it is also the most effective way. After thinking about it, the confusion in Doflamingo's eyes turned into unprecedented determination and confidence, and he decided to give it his all. I don't know if the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, will vomit blood when they know about it. Doflamingo's face was swept away, and he thought with a wicked smile. Staring at Doflamingo's face, Treble instinctively felt that something was wrong. He intended to persuade him, but he was stared back by Doflamingo's fierce face. How is the ship's repair work, if you can go to sea immediately? Not yet. Treble's ugly face looked awkward as he awkwardly said, I've been in charge of collecting all kinds of materials these days. Moreover, after we escaped from Impel Down, the ship has been broken into pieces. There is no possibility of repairing it. In addition, Caesar needs someone to look after him. These words were like bone-chilling cold water that extinguished Doflamingo's fanatical heart. Forget it, there is still a Shichibukai, 7 Shichibukai, Doflamingo's eyes. The fire in Doflamingo's eyes calmed down, and he said calmly. It was useless to be too hasty. On the contrary, it might backfire. What Wu Chen gave was only a vague concept, and he still needed to plan in detail to realize it. With the official establishment of Shichibukai, the whole world was devastated by a magnitude 10 earthquake. The superorganization formed by 7 pirates definitely has the power to rewrite the world situation, even if there are only 4 pirates now. This kind of unprecedented organization belongs to the world government. For a time, there were many discussions around the world, and most of them were abusive. Whether it was pirates, ordinary civilians, or Marines, they all have an attitude of hatred for this deformed organization. It is reasonable for Marines and ordinary civilians to hate the pirate organization Shichibukai. After all, the damage brought to them by the pirates is hard to forget. Their families and comrades have fallen in the blood of the pirates, and it is natural to hate them. What's funny is that the pirates also hate this weird organization, and they regard the members of Shichibukai as the world government's lackeys, and they can't wait to get rid of them. Hawkeye, is this your choice? On a remote island in the Grand Line, a big red ship was leaning against the shore. A bonfire was burning on the island, and a group of naked pirates were celebrating happily. Combined with the red skulls on the ship, it is the Akagami, red hair, pirates of the New World. Under the cool shade of the tree, Akagami, red hair, looked at the newspaper in his hand cautiously. He didn't care about the other pirates, but Hawkeye next to Sengoku caught his attention. Dustless suffered a crushing defeat in his hands, which has left an indelible mark in his heart. Since then, he has been strengthening his strength. His strength has improved significantly. In the face of Dustless, Shanks still has no strength to fight. He can never let go of that bottomless strength. That guy is a monster. Thinking of Dustless's unfathomable strength, Shanks can only smile helplessly. It's not that he is incompetent, but that the enemy is too far away. With silver hair and a thin cigarette in his mouth, a young man who looked quite calm approached Akagami, red hair, and sat beside him very casually. It seemed that the two were quite familiar with each other. This person is Ben Beckman, the deputy captain of the Akagami, red hair, pirates. What is the origin of the people behind Hawkeye? Frowning, Akagami, red hair, was extremely puzzled. Shichibukai is just a recently established organization. Hawkeye seems to have been able to walk freely in the world government's base camp Mariewa a few months ago. His means are so powerful. As a pirate, Hawkeye is definitely the first person in the world to come and go to Mariewa safely. This speculation is very simple, but I'm afraid you can't accept the result. Beckman's squinted eyes emitted a wise light. In fact, the combination of various factors has explained everything. In the whole world, only the original residents of Mariewa, the celestial dragon, known as the descendants of the Creator, can do it. Chapter 503. He is worthy of being the strongest brain of the Akagami, red hair, pirates. He is indeed a Tenryubito, and I saw it with my own eyes. Akagami, red hair, laughed and gave Beckman a thumbs up. He has long known the identity of Dustless's Tenryubito, because he wore the unique uniform of Tenryubito during the battle, and no one in the world dared to pretend to be a Tenryubito. The only thing that surprised Red Hair Shanks was that the identity of Tenryubito could make the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, give in and allow Hawkeye to freely enter and exit places like Mariewa. After all, Tenryubito is synonymous with waste, but he can make the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, give in and bow down. This, maybe the status of Tenryubito is much higher than Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Beckman's eyes flashed and he rationally guessed. The impression of Tenryubito to the world is like a fat and incompetent person, and it is because of the protection of the world government that they can linger on. Now it seems that this is just wishful thinking of the world. 800 years ago, since Tenryubito could unify the world, it was said that they were not all useless. That may be the case. Akagami, red hair, nodded and agreed, and he also guessed the same. The strong are respected and pay attention to force. In the world where the fist is bigger, only special mysterious things that are enough to deter the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, exist, and Tenryubito can sleep peacefully. We used to be a frog in the well. Beckman laughed at himself when he thought of the past of Tenryubito. Not only the Akagami, red hair, pirates, but the whole world is deceived by the ugly and fragile appearance of Tenryubito, and the reality is far more complicated than they thought before. The mysterious enemy who fought with you doesn't seem to be an ordinary person. According to my guess, he can make the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, helpless. His status in Tenryubito is also not bad. Beckman pondered when he thought of Dustless who defeated Akagami, red hair. In the final analysis, the world is still dominated by people with big fists. If you want to make the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, bow down, you must have the capital to talk to them, strength. He is definitely not an ordinary person, otherwise, it would be impossible for him to defeat me. Rolling his eyes, Akagami, red hair, said angrily. These words sounded unruly, but it was an undeniable fact, because in the entire world, there were very few people who dared to say that they could defeat or even crush red hair Shanks. Beckman has always remained calm. As the person with the highest IQ in the Akagami, red hair, pirates, he often has unique insights. After careful consideration, he found that it is not impossible to win against Dustless. There's no need to worry. That guy doesn't look like a bad guy who would stop at nothing. With a bold smile, the naturally optimistic red-haired man indicated that there was no need to worry. Dustless didn't give him the impression that he was the kind of person who would do anything to achieve his goals. Beckman just shook his head when he heard this. As the strongest brain of the Akagami, red hair, pirates, he is good at using his brain and thinking about danger in times of peace. It is because he considers all kinds of unstable factors that the Akagami, red hair, pirates can prepare in advance and break through countless difficulties and obstacles to reach this height today. Maybe we can take him down if we join forces with the others, Beckman said seriously, his eyes shining. One red hair Shanks may not be enough to deal with Dustless, but 2 or 3 besieging Dustless together is enough to change the disadvantage, and the quantity will lead to the improvement of the quality. This is possible. Red-haired Shanks nodded in agreement. Although Dustless was powerful, he believed that he couldn't do everything. There was a saying that it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. For example, gathering the other, Yonko, 4 emperors, to besiege Dustless. This is not realistic. Immediately thinking of the pirates who are like water and fire, Red Hair's fighting spirit was extinguished. If the pirates can really put aside their past grievances and hatred and work together to deal with the enemy, the Marine headquarters may not exist in this world. Not realistic. Not necessarily. Beckman smiled slightly. Compared with the slightly decadent Red Hair, he was full of confidence. Compared with the Marines, the pirates are indeed a pile of loose sand. They look hopeless, but in fact, it is very simple to unite them. They just lack the right opportunity. Businessmen pursue profit, so do pirates. It is not difficult to join forces with the other, Yonko, 4 emperors, to suppress Dustless. People like 100 Beast Dustless see Dustless as a thorn in their side and they can't wait to get rid of him. Perhaps they only need to propose to him and he will resolutely join the army that besieges Dustless. There is no need to do this for the time being. There is only motivation when there is oppression. Joining forces with others is always unreliable. Shanks took off the straw hat on his head and put it on his face to block the scorching sun. He will never do this unless it is a last resort. Beckman's idea also comes from the sudden rise of the 7 Warlords of the Sea organization. It is because the Marines fear the power of pirates that they will use the power of pirates to suppress the pirates. In his view, the reason why the organization Shichibukai was established is also a manifestation of the Marines' fear of the pirates. If the Marine can annihilate all the pirates by their own strength, there is no need to rely on the power of the pirates. The Marines are not idiots. If they offend all the pirates in the world, it is bound to cause a fierce backlash, and then the pirates of the entire sea will gather together. This gathered power is enough to destroy the whole world. Red Hair Shanks waved his hand and murmured. For the time being, there is no need to join forces with others. What's more, he can't disregard everything and join forces with others. The foundation of the cooperation between pirates is not the so-called trust, but the explicit absolute benefits. On the surface, they are righteous and exclude all alliances, but in the dark, there are countless such things like stabbing each other in the back. In the final analysis, pirates are always a group of people who chase their dreams and actually rob others. At least more than 95% of pirates are like this. It is self-evident what the consequences of such a group of people ruling the world. The Marines crusade against pirates for a reason, but pirates are synonymous with all kinds of evil. This is also the biggest reason why the Marines have failed countless times and can be forgiven. Chapter 504. It's no wonder that Akagami, red hair, is so hesitant. Pirates are synonymous with shamelessness, and cooperation is a last resort. Now they have not reached such a dangerous situation. It's not the right time to talk about cooperation. What's more, after the establishment of Shichibukai, Marine and the government did not make any extreme moves. Several big pirates are currently returning to their own territory. All in all, the hasty establishment of Shichibukai is a storm for the whole world, and the already strange and unpredictable world situation is more complicated for a while. Yonko, for emperors, reign over the world. Shichibukai is born, and all kinds of signs indicate that an unprecedented chaotic world is about to come, and the survivors who can stand out in this storm are the last heroes. On the blue sea, the luxurious ship slowly moved forward. The shape of the ship is quite similar to the battleship of Marine headquarters. The only difference is that it hangs the flag of the world government. The crew on the ship are not Marine soldiers. They are all men in suits, very similar to the exclusive bodyguards of Tenryubito. The gold and silver treasures piled up on the deck are all in sight, exposed to the sun at will, and all kinds of dazzling jewelry exudes a burning light. Even so, the pirate ships that passed by along the way, although they were eager to see through it, they still took a detour and some even fled in panic for fear of not being able to avoid it. Treasures are precious, but they are still too far away from life. Why did he let these pirates, who were greedy for money, escape? There is no other reason. All the treasures on this ship are the heavenly gold of transport ships from all over the world as tribute to Tenryubito. If they rob recklessly, the admirals of Marine headquarters will immediately chase after them. However, there are exceptions to everything. Today, someone came to rob the heavenly gold transport ship of Tenryubito and followed behind this ship. Young master, is it possible that you want to rob Tenryubito's heavenly gold? This is a moth to the fire. A large ship was clearly visible. Standing on the deck, Doflamingo looked at the big ship in front of him with a ferocious smile on his face. The greed in his bones is not concealed. Regardless of Treble's persuasion, he waved his arms and said fanatically, "I am robbing Tenryubito. Robbing Tenryubito's heavenly gold, Gorosei, 5 elder stars, can't ignore me." Hearing this, Treble was twitching with anger. Robbing Tenryubito's heavenly gold is tantamount to slapping Tenryubito's face, and the angry Tenryubito will definitely punish Gorosei, 5 elder stars. This is equivalent to indirectly slapping Gorosei, 5 elder stars, in the face. Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Gorosei, 4, 7 elder, with Tenryubito, 10 5 elder stars. 7, 5 elder, 7, 6 elder. This was simply asking the Don Quixote pirates to jump into a fire pit. So what, if I don't embarrass them, how could they invite me to be a Shichibukai? Doflamingo said disapprovingly as he stared at the approaching heavenly gold transport ship. Since he has already offended Gorosei, 5 elder stars, it is better to completely offend them. Anyway, with Dustless's strong protection and his identity as a Tenryubito, it is enough to ensure that he can grab Tenryubito's heavenly gold without worry. As Dustless said in the Den Mushi before, there is no free lunch in the sky. Danger and opportunity coexist. Wanting to get a generous return without paying a price is just a fool's dream. If things get big, Gorosei, 5 elder stars, will lose face. They will be pointed at by others and they will be able to face me. Although Doflamingo is unwilling, this is the fact. In front of Gorosei, 5 elder stars, he is not worth mentioning. This remark made Treble speechless. To be a Shichibukai, not only does one need powerful strength to deter, but one also needs to have a chilling reputation. Robbing Tenryubido's heavenly gold and being able to live leisurely in the world is enough to make the whole world go into an uproar. 3 days later, in Marijoy's. In Dustless's villa, early in the morning, the bald Gorosei, 5 elder stars, with a knife came to ask questions, and the whole room was full of a strong smell of gunpowder. There should be a limit to your lawlessness. You dare to openly rob the heavenly gold that was offered to the celestial dragons. Even if you are audacious, you should stop before going too far. The bald Gorosei looked gloomy and gnashed his teeth. Then, he casually handed a newspaper to Wu Qin. The largest banner in the newspaper was a laughing Doflamingo, arrogantly stepping on the head of a government official, and behind him were members of the Don Quixote family carrying gold and silver treasures. The picture in the newspaper was very clear, and there were even close-ups of Doflamingo, including the bombardment of the government warship, and the detailed photos of the robbery were published in the newspaper. Isn't this too detailed? It must be someone with ulterior motives who deliberately forged it to frame him. After a while, Dustless pretended to be stupid and said with an expression that had nothing to do with him. Someone is framing Doflamingo. I hope so too. But he really did it. With a snort, the bald Gorosei, 5 elder stars, with a knife had long expected Dustless to be like this, and then took out a thick stack of photos from his waist and threw them on the table angrily. The figure in the photo was the proud Doflamingo, and the unscrupulous smile seemed to be mocking the incompetence and uselessness of the world government. The bald Gorosei, 5 elder stars, with a knife finally couldn't keep calm, and the terrible blue veins on his forehead bulged, his old face trembled with anger, and his furious roar resounded throughout the villa. That kid is simply insatiable. Not only did he rob Tenryubido's heavenly gold, but he also filmed the detailed robbery process himself, and the protagonist is him, Doflamingo. And it was copied into dozens of copies and sent to newspapers all over the world, threatening to kill all the newspapers if they don't make the headlines. The bald Gorosei, 5 elder stars, with a knife roared bitterly. He robbed the heavenly gold, and was afraid that others didn't know about it, and he also filmed it as his own special portrait, to make the world abuzz. Obviously, Doflamingo did this deliberately. Chapter 505. The bald Gorosei with the sword showed a murderous look, and the uncontrollable murderous look changed the surrounding space and environment. The moisture contained in the flowing air was frozen into ice and turned into fine snow-like debris falling to the ground, and the furniture in the villa was covered with a layer of cold frost. Doflamingo clearly knew how serious the consequences of doing this were, but he still did it without hesitation, making it clear that he wanted to slap the Gorosei in the face. And it was so loud. Shooting the whole robbery process and sending it to the major newspapers, and then threatening them to announce it to the world, such behavior is indeed challenging the dignity of the government. Dustless also couldn't help but admire Doflamingo's crazy actions. In the Den Mushi, he only proposed to Doflamingo that he could rob the sky gold as a tribute to the Tenryubito, but this kid really turned his verbal proposal into a substantial action. The most excessive thing is that he took countless photos, directly making the world government lose face, and there is no chance to hide it. Yes, such a heinous person should be dealt with as soon as possible. Seeing that Dustless had signs of loosening his mouth to get rid of Doflamingo, the bald quintet immediately struck while the iron was hot. Just as he was about to propose to send someone to secretly get rid of Doflamingo, a casual sentence from Dustless made the words he had been organizing in his mind for a long time disappear in an instant. Straightforward, this is also in line with One Piece's personality. He is not afraid of anything. This is the true portrayal of a pirate. This is very well shown in him. Looking at the laughing Doflamingo in the photo, Dustless nodded. Hearing this, the mouth of the bald quintet elder stars holding the sword twitched violently. His old face suddenly collapsed and became gloomy. He had come to condemn Doflamingo, not to hear Wuchen praise Doflamingo. Despicable bastard who colluded with evil. Remembering Doflamingo's sensitive identity, the 5 honored stars, who were in charge of the household, deflated, and the anger in their hearts dissipated. Even though the Don Quixote family has given up the identity of the Tenryubito and lost all privileges, the identity of the Tenryubito has never changed. The law of this world stipulates that the celestial dragons are supreme. With the almost invincible super halo of the celestial dragon identity, and the collusion with Dustless, the possibility of secretly killing Doflamingo was almost zero. A good world has been turned into a mess because of him. The celestial dragon's heavenly gold was robbed, and the culprit, Doflamingo, was free and unfettered. The shock that spread was self-evident. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled. He knew how tangled these 5 elder stars were. The enemy was right in front of them, but they couldn't arrest him. They could only helplessly stare at him. Faced with such a cruel reality, the 5 elder stars had no way to deal with it because this was the law of this world. The purpose of Doflamingo is nothing more than the 7 warlords of the sea. It's better to take a step back and endure for a while to ensure that there will be no worries for 100 days. Glancing at the bald Gorosei holding the sword, Wu Qin kindly advised. Who made the law of this world so that the celestial dragons with countless privileges can't be arrested? Even the world's highest power Gorosei can't violate it. Hearing this, the bald Gorosei's face was livid, and his eyes were locked on the rampant Doflamingo in the photo, and an awe-inspiring sword energy shot out. Caw caw caw, the complete photo suddenly burst open and turned into debris all over the ground, venting his anger. Impossible, how can such a bold criminal be condoned? Giving him the title of 7 warlords of the sea will only make him worse and ride on our heads. Shaking his head resolutely, the bald Gorosei's tone did not have the slightest room for retreat. For Dustless, he can tolerate it. After all, Dustless is also a celestial dragon, and his identity is nobler than their Gorosei. Secondly, the bigger reason is that his absolute strength is almost extraordinary, and he is qualified to say no to their Gorosei. Doflamingo is just a clown, and he has repeatedly jumped out to slap their old faces. How can they tolerate it? Up to you, but don't lift a stone and drop it on your own feet. Doflamingo is not easy to deal with. If you underestimate him, your hands will be full of spikes. Seeing the bald Gorosei so stubborn, Dustless shrugged and was too lazy to waste his breath. In this game, Doflamingo was destined to be the final winner at the beginning. In the original work, Doflamingo used this shameless means to threaten the world government, and finally achieved his goal and successfully became a member of 7 warlords of the sea. Now Dustless is secretly indulging Doflamingo, and the final winner must be him. Goodbye. Perceiving that Dustless and the bald-headed Gorosei who had nothing to do with each other also tactfully flashed away, Dustless's position had already been made clear. Staying behind would be asking for trouble. Do you think you can do whatever you want because you are a celestial dragon? Play with the whole world unscrupulously. The bald Gorosei with the sword who came out of Dustless's villa was cold, and the cold light gathered in the corner of his eyes, and the dry corner of his mouth raised a cunning smile. The government is afraid of the identity of Doflamingo, but there is a kind of person who is not afraid of anything. The identity of a celestial dragon is useless, and if you provoke them, you will be killed. The law stipulates that a celestial dragon is supreme, but this is only limited to those who obey the law. For those who do not obey the law, the life and death of a celestial dragon has nothing to do with them. A mere pirate dares to take an inch and take a mile. There are thousands of ways to kill you. A chill floated out of his body, and the gloominess on his old face was swept away and replaced by a strong self-confidence. Doflamingo's life as a pirate has offended countless enemies. Those enemies, one day, come to the door to revenge is understandable. Chapter 506. Doflamingo's life and death enemies are countless, as many as the carps crossing the river. He has done a lot of evil, offended and indirectly offended pirates, as well as some black market arms dealers who want his life. In other words, Doflamingo is such a person with enemies all over the world. If he is killed one day, it is a normal thing. You always think that you're an opportunistic winner and that you're unparalleled in scheming. In fact, you're no exception. You're just like those people you've schemed against in the past. You're just a chess piece in my hands. The bald quintet holding the knife despised Doflamingo to the extreme in his heart. Doflamingo always felt that he was very special. He could foresee and control everything in advance, leading any situation to develop in his direction. In fact, he was also a clown being used by others. Joker, clown, huh? But this funny title really suits you, brother Doflamingo. The bald quintet elder stars holding a sword turned around and took a deep look at Dustless Mansion before he left. Hancock stood gracefully on the tall building. She looked through the transparent glass and observed the departing Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Her clear eyes rippled as she walked towards Dustless's bedroom with graceful steps. Master, he has left. Walking elegantly into the room, Dustless was sitting on the sofa with his eyes closed. Hancock calmly reported to Dustless. Time is the best medicine. In the face of Dustless, Hancock is no longer as afraid as before. Left? Is that old thing's head muddled from anger? Hearing that, Wu-Chin opened his eyes and wondered in puzzlement. In Dustless's cognition, whether it is the bald Gorosei with the sword or the other 4 Gorosei, they are the masters who will not act until they see the hair. If they did not get any benefits, it would be impossible for them to call for reinforcements. Maybe he felt that he couldn't take advantage of the young master, so he left. Hancock tilted her head and said her own analysis. Even she knows that the Gorosei are all cunning foxes. They have a way of thinking that ordinary people can't understand and guess. Once they think that they will not get any return for their labor, they will immediately retreat and terminate the plan. The bald Gorosei with the sword was like this. You said I am a villain. Dustless almost spat out the tea that he swallowed. He looked quite speechless, then he waved his hand and was too lazy to care about these details. Anyway, there is nothing wrong with a villain, at least he will not suffer. It is much better than suffering. After thinking about it, Hancock's words quickly caused Dustless to ponder. Hancock, have you ever seen a hungry tiger let go of a fat sheep in front of its mouth? And this fat sheep has touched the tiger's butt several times. After a long silence, Dustless suddenly asked. This. Hancock heard the words and her face turned red, and her eyes widened as she looked at Dustless. Usually, Wu-Chin gave others the feeling that he was extremely quiet and had an ethereal temperament. He liked to read all kinds of books, so he was also infused with a dense scholarly aura. No one would have thought that the gentle and refined Wu-Chin would make such a vulgar comparison. Although the description is very appropriate, Hancock was also stunned for a while and did not recover. The hungry tiger referred to the 5 elder stars, and the fat lamb was undoubtedly Doflamingo. This fat lamb would often touch the tiger's butt, and even disgusted the insufferably arrogant tiger. The Gorosei will not let go of Doflamingo. According to the style of the Gorosei, they will not let go of Doflamingo. Hancock nodded elegantly and calmly. In the past, when Dustless and Hawkeye talked about the Gorosei, she was still uncomfortable because these big characters are not in the same dimension as her, and now she can face them safely. There must be a demon when things are abnormal. What's the use of conspiracy? It won't play the slightest role. I'm a transmigrator from the 3rd dimension, so how can I not be able to defeat you backward natives from the 2nd dimension? With a sneer, Dustless said with great confidence. Although the 5 elder stars were full of mysteries, and their identity, strength, and origin were all in a fog, Wuchen did not think that he would lose to them. After all, he had traveled through time and had the ability to learn from history, to predict the future. What's more, in the past confrontations, Dustless has won. On the other side of Mariehua, in the room of the Gorosei, 5 old men of different statures were clearly visible. It was not difficult to see from the old but strong body that their strength is incredible, and the years have not left any traces on them. Are you ready? The Gorosei with blonde hair and bronze skin was dull. The meaning revealed in the words was that they did not put Doflamingo in their eyes at all. Even a small ant was not as good as him, so they simply brushed it off. This kind of tasteless little person doesn't need them to do it themselves. They just need to find evidence of Doflamingo's previous schemes and hand it over to others. Naturally, someone can't wait to clean him up. The other 3 Gorosei heard the words, and their eyes also turned to the Gorosei with long hair and beard. This is natural, it was just evidence left in case of accidents. I thought it would never be used in my life. I didn't expect it to be used now, and it was used when we didn't want to. The Gorosei with long hair and beard lamented the impermanence of the world, and his words had a little more appreciation for Doflamingo. To be honest, I don't think that kid can be so capable. All this is about to end. The abandoned son of the celestial dragon still wants to be Shichibukai. I'm afraid that even if we are willing, that group of celestial dragons may not be as Doflamingo wants. The Gorosei with a messy birthmark on his forehead also had a complicated expression. He didn't expect Doflamingo to be so troublesome and make the whole world jump up and down. In particular, his bold and extraordinary portraits had already spread throughout the world. Chapter 507. Time flew by, and before he knew it, another half a month had passed through his fingers. Dustless also sat quietly in Mariehua for half a month. He thought that the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, with constipated faces would immediately stage the prelude to the conspiracy, but there was no movement for half a month. It was like a stone falling into the sea suddenly calmed down, as if it had never happened. Not only was Mariehua extremely calm, but the whole world had an unprecedented dead silence, and even things like pirates attacking marines from time to time became rare. It seemed that everything was due to the deterrence of the 7 warlords of the sea. The whole world was restored to peace, and the calm was like the stagnant water under the deep sea. Coincidentally, very soon, there was a world-shaking event that happened all of a sudden. 2 days ago, 100 Beast Kaido's fleet inexplicably fought with Gecko Moria's pirates. Both sides were top pirates, and for a time, the sea was stained with blood, attracting countless sea kings. Surprisingly, Gecko Moria and 100 Beast Kaido were evenly matched, and the losses on both sides were maintained at the same stage. Of course, this was the case when Kaido himself did not join in. Perhaps in his eyes, Gecko Moria was just a clown, not worthy of him to do it himself. However, the next day, 100 Beast Kaido couldn't help but do it himself. The loss was small, but the face was big. He almost wiped out most of Gecko Moria's fleet in a crushing manner. Although Gecko Moria was arrogant, he was not an idiot. In the face of the fierce Yonko, for emperors, Kaido, he chose to temporarily avoid the edge. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. He still understood this simple truth. Where there is life, there is hope. He can make a comeback in the future. Now, he has to fight with the madman Kaido, and there is only a dead end in the future. Gecko Moria is quite smart. He is not stupid enough to fight with Kaido. That monster with the same body shape as a bat is so cunning. It must be true that you can't judge a book by its cover. Smacking his lips, Dustless looked at Moonlight Moria in a new light. According to the secret information obtained from White Setsu, Gecko Moria did not retreat, but retreated in order to advance. He set a trap and waited for 100 Beast Kaido to get in. In other words, Gecko Moria was just deliberately showing weakness before. You could have just run away. Why did you have to give up the last of your belongings? Shaking his head, Dustless disagreed with Gecko Moria's strategy. 100 Beast Kaido and Moria were not in the same dimension at all. Even if he set a trap in advance, it would not change the reality of the fiasco. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and machinations were fleeting clouds. One was one of the 4 emperors who ruled the world, while the other was just a clown who had just risen to fame. As he stretched lazily, a strange voice suddenly spread in his mind. Only Ling, the embodiment of the system consciousness, had this ability. That horned woman wants to see you. A voice that made one feel relaxed and happy spread out like the sound of nature. Only Dustless could hear it, and it was filled with an indescribable magical power that calmed down his heart that had been going up and down. A woman with horns on her head. You're not talking about Kaguya, are you? Dustless's mouth twitched, and he asked speechlessly. He could not help but have goosebumps all over his body, and there were black lines hanging on his forehead. Dustless was curious about the strange horns on Kaguya's head. He only touched it slightly, and she chased him all over the world. Looking for me. Could it be that she has thought it through and intends to give herself to me? Thinking of Kaguya's indifferent, arrogant character, Dustless shook his head and sighed. Every time they met in the system world, the first opponent was her. Decisively waving his hand to refuse, Dustless was about to refuse Ling's proposal, but the latter wrinkled her nose with some dissatisfaction. The 5-year lucky draw cycle is coming to an end, don't you realize? Ling's voice was a little reproachful. This kind of thing was not up to her to worry about. Dustless became a hands-off shopkeeper, and everything was handed over to her personally. Hearing this, he couldn't help but think of the lucky draw that was carried out only a few months ago, and he subconsciously said, the last lucky draw time seems to be a few months ago. Isn't it once every 5 years? Dustless still remembered that after taming Hawkeye, he immediately returned to Mariewa for the lucky draw. The contents included Gate of Babylon and a mysterious light fruit. It was only a few months now. There is no mistake in the time. Until today, there has been a 20-year deadline, but you have only done it 3 times. As a system, Ling naturally can't make such a mistake. So I have to add new abilities again. A smile appeared on the handsome face, and he seemed to think of something, and then his expression became stiff. The lucky draw is carried out in the world of the system. Kaguya, the old woman who caught him, will come to trouble him again. Although Dustless is confident that he can defeat her, or even seal her again, but no matter what, they have already been husband and wife. Dustless can't do such a thing. He can be cruel to the enemy, but as for people like Kaguya who have a relationship with him, it's another matter. A mysterious force quietly spread out, and regardless of whether Dustless agreed or not, Ling directly pulled Dustless into the space of the system by brute force. The space-time in front of him suddenly changed and turned into a blue starry sky, surrounded by flowers and trees, full of the fresh smell of nature. Chapter 508. Her silver hair fluttered in the wind, and her long hair was filled with an elegant fragrance. The smell wasn't very strong and was relatively light. It was the kind that Dustless liked the most. At this moment, Kiria was completely different from before. Her cold temperament that rejected people thousands of miles away was restrained, and she blended into nature. She was abnormally gentle and approachable. Usually, when Dustless saw her, there would be a boulder that weighed a few thousand kilograms behind him. This was all due to the majestic chakra's deterrence. But now, there was no such suppression. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. The sun must have risen from the west today. It's really strange. There seems to be something wrong with her. Dustless raised his eyebrows and said in puzzlement. After a moment of silence, Dustless finally couldn't help but be curious. A trace of energy spread out from his body as he quietly observed the changes in Huey. Unknowingly, it gave Wu-Chen a very strange feeling. As for the specifics, he also could not describe it. In short, this was an unprecedented experience. What a strange detection method. Is this the power you learned in this world? With a slight thought, ripples appeared in the void in front of him, turning into an invisible defensive wall, preventing Dustless from probing. They all went around Huey. Her eyes were as calm as spring water as she looked at Dustless calmly. Huey was no longer as raging as before. The her in front of him gave people a feeling of extraordinarily tranquility. That domineering aura of being isolated from the world had faded a lot. The impression she gave to Dustless was that she had a lot more human-like gentleness. How is the outside world? Is it the same as our previous world? Huey asked expectantly with a light voice that soothed one's heart. Her eyes were filled with hope and yearning. The supreme celestial voice was pleasing to the ear, causing people to be intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. After being stunned for a few seconds, Dustless nodded and revealed a faint smile. The Huey in front of him was refreshing. Perhaps this was the real her after taking off her cold exterior. It's as colorful as the previous world, Dustless replied after a moment of contemplation. Dustless continued to observe Huey from the corner of his eyes. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. There seemed to be a mysterious existence that used an unknown demonic art to unite his heart with Huey G's. They could hear each other's thoughts. How fascinating. A look of longing appeared on Huey's face before her eyes dimmed. Dustless was the only one who could enter and exit this iron-like world. Everyone else was forever locked in this world. The simple word exit was as heavy as Mount Tai to Kagaya. It was just an extravagant hope. It was so far away that it seemed boundless. Chapter 509. It was not difficult to imagine how unprecedented the future of the offspring of Dustless and Kagaya's bloodline would be. This meant that other than the abilities obtained from the system, all of Dustless's abilities could be passed down through genes, including the abilities possessed by Kagaya. It still feels a little strange. After thinking about it, Dustless smiled bitterly. After all, he had done that kind of thing with Yu Luo many times in the past. The latter's stomach did not make the slightest sound, and until now, he had only had intimate contact with Kagaya once, but it was a direct hit. In his mind, he couldn't help but think of Kagaya's peerless figure. On the surface, Dustless expressed that he didn't care about Kagaya, but in fact, he cared about her quite a lot. Now that she was pregnant with Dustless's flesh and blood, it was even more difficult to give up. The sudden birth of life had already linked Kagaya and Dustless together forever. Compared to the conflicted Dustless, the system's consciousness was more open-minded and teased with a smile. This is called fate. Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes and was too lazy to argue with her. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. He was afraid that Kagaya's current mood was as complicated as Dustless's. The higher the level of the life form, the more difficult it was to reproduce. Not only Kagaya, but also Dustless. To a certain extent, it was a miracle that Kagaya's body could be pregnant. Stop talking nonsense, let's draw the lottery. Dustless threw the complicated thoughts out of his mind and said. Counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. Now, they could only take one step at a time. Overall, Dustless was still relatively satisfied with this result for the time being. Ling tapped the void lightly, and a huge circular turntable fell out of thin air. It was marked with various major abilities. The overwhelming number of abilities made Wu-Chen drool with envy. For the current Dustless, some of the abilities were still extremely heaven-defying. The wheel turned slowly, and under Dustless's expectant gaze, from slow to fast, during which some of the abilities of the benchmark made Dustless confused. After a few breaths of time, the spinning wheel slowly came to a stop. What the hell is this? The thing that the benchmark pointed to made Dustless's eyes widen. The appearance was an unprecedented supermeteorite. The magnificent meteorite was unimaginably big, enough to cover the entire void. Dustless knew the following words. Uchiha Madara's, Tinge season. What's the use of this thing? With a stiff expression, Dustless's expectation disappeared, and asked with dissatisfaction. This kind of trick is dispensable for Kuroto. He can use the terrifying gravitational force of the Tensigan to create a meteorite group that is far larger than the Tensigan. Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes, as if this is how it should be. He touched Kagaya's little hand and sighed inwardly. It's really smooth. Take your hand away, don't force me. Glaring at Dustless, Kagaya warned fiercely, and at the same time, a monstrous evil aura erupted from her body, indicating that she is not joking. Dustless, however, just smiled. You are my second wife, and the child in your belly is my seed. As the father of the child, is it wrong to listen to the movements of my future child? After saying that, Dustless's ear was close to Kagaya's belly. Readers, do you like a son or a daughter? At least give me an opinion. Chapter 5:10. Kagaya's pretty face was livid. Seeing Dustless being so unscrupulous and frivolous, she condensed a chakra fluctuation that was enough to shatter a mountain with her other hand. Kagaya was the ancestor of chakra. In the era where she lived, there was no concept of techniques. Any technique could be easily grasped. Are you sure you want to touch me? I'll just hug you like this. Dustless had a shameless look. His hands wrapped around Kagaya's waist and pulled her into his embrace. He deeply inhaled Kagaya's unique body fragrance and was addicted to it. Smack! The curvy body aroused Dustless's evil fire. Now that Kagaya was pregnant, Dustless couldn't force her to the ground and force himself on her. He could only stand and take advantage of her verbally. Dustless's lips were left on Kagaya's face with some water stains. Lecher! Kagaya clenched her teeth. She had never felt that Dustless was so hateful. Although he was shameless enough in the past, it was much better than his current shameless appearance. The majestic chakra that was condensed in her hands suddenly disappeared. Her eyes looked at the void in front of her indifferently. Her hostility was also restrained, as if she had acquiesced to Dustless's frivolity. How can Sun Wukong fight against Buddha? He is still my meal, Kagaya. Dustless gently blew a breath of hot air into Kagaya's ear. He was extremely pleased with himself. In such a short distance, Dustless would definitely be affected by such an unscrupulous attack. So would Kagaya. The young and fragile life in her belly would be annihilated by the impact of the energy wave. Although Dustless's method was extremely despicable, it could be seen that Kagaya had feelings for the child in her belly. At the very least, she wouldn't hurt her. Her tight heart relaxed. Dustless was actually testing her. In fact, there is no need to fight and kill all day. You and I have already done it as husband and wife. Now we even have a child. There is no need to hunt me down. I am the father of the child. Dustless released Kagaya's hands and said sternly. Hearing this, Kagaya just sneered. This child has nothing to do with you. You are just an unrelated outsider, and your future surname is Otsutsuki, not Uchiha. That's all. From the beginning to the end, she had never admitted that this child was related to Dustless. The so-called father was just his wishful thinking. That's not up to you. Hearing that, Wuchen just smiled. Blood was thicker than water, and it was impossible for Kagaya to change it. The blood that flowed in her bones was a fact that could not be violated. This kind of thing could not be erased forever. It seems that it will take a while. Glancing at Kagaya's belly, Dustless secretly calculated in his heart. The belly is only slightly bulging. According to the normal human pregnancy cycle, it will take at least a few months for the child to be born. Dustless's eyes flashed with a strange light. The wooden hut that had been frozen by Kagai's killing intent collapsed in an instant, and warm sunlight shone in. Dustless's eyes were locked on the slightly sluggish Kagai, and he declared his sovereignty to her overbearingly. Remember this clearly, I don't want to repeat this sentence a third time. There is only one master in this world, and his name is Uchiha Dustless. She had to admit that if there was only one choice for a spouse, Dustless in front of her was the most suitable. It was barely perfect. The only thing that made her unbearable was that Dustless's arrogant and unquestionable character and tone often gave Kagai such an illusion. In front of Dustless, even if it was a god, he had to lower his head and obey his orders obediently. Let me surrender to you. White eyes filled with determination, Kagai made up her mind to end things with Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless's body froze, and then his eyes widened, looking at Kagai incredulously. Instinctively, he thought that this speech was a conspiracy. There is no such thing as a free lunch in the sky. When did the fierce goddess of Uno take the initiative to come to the door? Don't misunderstand, I also have a condition. Seeing that Dustless's thoughts went astray, Kagai immediately pulled Dustless's thoughts back. Want her to come to the door directly? Don't be wishful thinking. Dustless frowned slightly, and his gaze became sharp, penetrating the heavy void and landing on Kagai's body. It was incomparably cold, as if he wanted to see through her true thoughts. However, Kagai was covered in a mysterious veil and was wrapped in thick chakra, blocking Dustless's prying. There's no harm in saying it. After thinking for a while, Dustless no longer hesitated and signaled Kagai to directly state her conditions. This heroic tone, as well as that thick confidence, as well as the confidence to be able to remain calm in the face of everything, made Kagai's brows knit together. Staring at Dustless, who had a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, she heavily snorted. As long as you can withstand 80% of my strength in my current state and withstand 3 of my moves without moving, I will follow you wherever you go. Meeting Dustless's gaze, Kagai clenched her teeth. After saying that, Kagai's eyes stared fixedly at Dustless. As long as he retreated in the slightest and avoided her gaze, it meant that Dustless didn't have the courage, and his previous bold words were all empty words. However, she was destined to be disappointed. Dustless's expression didn't change from beginning to end. Not only did he not show any signs of retreating, the corner of his mouth raised into the long-awaited smile. What's so funny? Glaring angrily at Dustless, Kagai asked unkindly. She was serious, but Dustless's smile was perfunctory. Of course it's funny, you took the initiative to come to the door for me to enjoy, how can I not be happy? Looking at Kagai, Dustless's mouth raised a smile of success. It seems that the previous excessive words had a good effect. Kagai's angry look was within his expectations. If you want to make her collapse, you must first make her crazy. Since Kagai has made a move, Dustless certainly can't back down. The smile on his face quickly disappeared, and his thumb pointed to the ground under his feet, and a powerful roar resounded through the sky. Don't save your strength, just bring out your full strength. As long as you can make my feet move a little bit, Dustless Uchiha will lose, and from then on, you can fly as high as you want. The unruly voice was like rolling thunder, reaching people's ears, making them dizzy. Hearing this, Kagai couldn't help but look at Dustless in astonishment. That unprecedented confidence, even she was affected. Ah! The more the sharp blade was unsheathed, the thicker and more terrifying the blood-colored lightning in the sky became, and the larger the area of the lightning became. When the entire blade was exposed to the air, the sky was already covered with blood-colored lightning, like a sea of lightning. On the other hand, Wu Chen's entire temperament had changed drastically. His deep eyes had turned blood red, and his entire body was covered in a purplish-black mist. That powerful and almost materialized demonic aura made one's scalp go numb. "It's over, Kagai," Dustless's voice fell, the first-generation ghost blade in his hand was raised, and a huge blood-red light whizzed out from the tip of the blade. The void along the way was directly torn and crushed by the powerful sword pressure. In the blink of an eye, the bone spur that rushed over was swallowed, and the two disappeared between heaven and earth at the same time. The only thing that proved their existence was the sky that was torn by the sword pressure. Chapter 5:13. The long and narrow space that was torn apart showed jagged marks as if it was bitten by a shark. On the other side, the dark space went straight to the depths of the universe, and the whole shot out a terrifying devouring force. Fortunately, this was a small space in the system. The space was weak and abnormally fragile compared to the outside world. The outside world absolutely could not tear the void so easily. The remaining energy fluctuations in the air had not yet dissipated. While the void cracks were being repaired, they were immediately pulled apart by this tyrannical force. This cycle repeated again and again, and the scene was even more terrifying. "How is it?" The demonic blood light seeped out from behind Dustless, and the scarlet eyes floated out of faint blood mist. The corner of his mouth was slightly raised, and Dustless, who was holding the first-generation ghost blade, gave a particularly gloomy feeling. His whole body seemed to be soaked in a blood pool, and the smell of blood assailed the nostrils. Deep in the clouds, the blood lightning gathered on the ground, and the entire system world showed a decay and collapse. It seems that this world is also a wonderful place, where the strong gather. Cautiously looking at the blood lightning in the void, Huiji said with a little yearning. The unknown world, the top strong, this was the biggest temptation for Huiji. The first move is over, there are still two more. The smell of blood came head-on. Looking up, it was Dustless who was holding the first-generation ghost blade. The bloody light draped over his back, and there was no human emotion in his cold eyes. The ground under Wu Chen's feet had been eroded to the point that it was unbearable to look at. It had turned black. The surface of the ground had died forever, and there was no possibility of revival. "Don't be complacent." Eyes locked on Dustless, Huiji warned fiercely. The cold air that floated out of the thin lips could freeze the air, and the condensed ice fell to the ground, adding a little gloominess. Huiji's face was hazy with a transparent cold mist, and her pale face was even more terrifying. From the beginning to the end, under the insight of the abnormal ability of Byakugan, she clearly saw that Dustless's feet did not move at all. "It seems to me that you're regretting it out of humiliation," Dustless asked with a smile when he saw Huiji's terrifying expression. He then raised two fingers and shook them at Huiji. "There are still two moves left. If you beg me, I can go easy on you. After all, a day as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. I can reluctantly give you some face." Seeing Dustless's actions, Hui's face turned ashen. She opened her mouth to retort, but she was speechless. The cruel reality made her feel extremely powerless. Dustless glanced at Kagaya and said in a hoarse voice, "That's the difference between you and me." Looking at her who didn't move, Dustless chuckled and said, "What's your last move, or are you already at your wit's end and plan to wash yourself clean and send yourself to me?" Unlike before, Hui showed a gentle smile in the face of Dustless's teasing this time, which made people feel like they were bathed in the spring breeze. Dustless was slightly stunned when he saw this. He frowned and looked at the abnormal Hui, trying to find a flaw in her body. Just as he was about to speak, her pleasant voice sounded first. "The third move has been launched." As Hui's light voice fell, a dazzling white light suddenly shot down from the sky. Dustless, who didn't feel it, subconsciously looked at the dazzling light in the sky. After a while, his pupils suddenly turned pale, and he became a walking corpse. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.